so I don't really know anything about living rural or what rural life is like. So that's the main reason why I picked this experience, to experience what rural life is like, but also what rural schools are like. Because if I'm planning to go into educational leadership or educational policy, it's great to know about all the different schooling contexts that are available in Australia.
I wanted to go on a rural placement to develop a more rounded understanding of education and the different aspects within the educational field.
The reason I selected rural placement was for two reasons. The first was I thought it'd be a really exciting experience and a bit different. And the second was when I was thinking about at the end of my course, when I'm trying to pick a school, I wanted to know that I had had a range of schools that I'd gone to placement to and that I kind of knew what school suited me the most, and I thought to go to a rural school would give me a really good view of different types of schools.
One of my main motivating factors was to see how geographical location affect teaching and the context of that school with regards to education. I wanted to see how the different stakeholders, for example, teachers, parents, students, actually view education as a whole, especially in Victoria.
So I did have a little bit of a preconception as to what I thought rural would be like. I thought I would be out in the fields, in the paddocks, you know, with the cows, and it would be very quiet and isolated from society. But once I got there, that whole perception was completely warped upside down as I realized it's not as isolated as we think to be living rural. The community is actually really close despite the distance from being away from Melbourne.
I had a preconception that it was going to be really relaxed. I've been told that rural schools were very relaxed in their teaching. What I found when I was at Wonthaggi Secondary was that while they were really relaxed, they had a really good balance between being relaxed and working really hard, and so they had a relaxed environment, but all the kids still had really high expectations, and the teachers worked really hard to ensure that all the kids were really well looked after and really successful in their studies.
Definitely. From a lot of readings or from the television shows that I see, I thought that the rural placement that I'll be embarking at that point in time would be somewhat backdated, or perhaps resources were not enough for the people living in that area. But I was severely surprised or taken aback when I could see that the resources, the teaching experiences, or the theories that the teacher used were very much contemporary and pretty much on par with the schools that I've been in the city.
So we got a lot of support before and during placement, before we went on this rural experience. We had a lot of great staff who were at uni, like Ondine and all the professional experienced staff that were there. So they really helped us understand what we were going into, what kind of context we were going to see. We even had a local staff member who came from the area, and that was really helpful to get settled in and know what school we were going to and what we were going to experience, because he was already there, he knew the neighbourhood, he knew the community, and that made us feel a whole lot more welcome and ready to go before we even left for placement. And even when we were on placement, we were really supported because we had staff on call, Facebook, email.
And they would send us lots of information about what we need to do to get ready for placement, what to expect on a general level, and we also attended an initial meeting before going on placement to meet in person with our professional experience coordinators and also the other students who were also going on placement, so we had familiar faces for when we were actually on the Bass Coast, which was nice. During placement, that communication was maintained via text message, on Moodle, also via email, and even by phone calls, and also we were visited by our professional experience coordinators at the school, which was really nice to touch base with them again in person. We also had a dinner, which was really nice during the first week, and we got to catch up and talk with everybody about their experiences and compare how everybody was going and their thoughts about their time at the schools.
Prior to placement, I found that Monash University gave me a lot of support. I was constantly in email contact with the placement office. They were telling me different ways that I could contact my mentor, different ways that I could overcome things I was a little bit worried about, and that meant that I went into my placement feeling really supported and really confident. During my placement, when I had concerns or I was a little bit stressed, it was really easy to contact Ondine and Greg. I didn't feel at any point that I was on my own, and they even came into schools and visited us regularly, and so constantly I felt like there was no worries because I knew I had someone I could talk to if there was any issues.
But personally, I think what I benefited the most would be the support and the visits from Ondine and from Greg, checking with us, how was our planning, how were we coping with our placement, and but I think the most important support perhaps could be the after dinner or after work communication on on social media, for example on Facebook, on Messenger, how we were coping, how we were planning. You wanted to know, or Ondine wanted to know, what were our concerns about the classes that we had.
So being placed in the Basque Coast was really great, as we were not too far from Melbourne, but we were far enough that it did feel you were away from home. It was a really great part of the country to be in. There's beautiful coastline there, there's wonderful beaches and things to see, and Phillip Island and so many different things. But also the Basque Coast is really great, as the schools there were really welcoming and they had really good facilities.
It was really good staying on the Basque Coast during placement because it meant that we had to be quite independent compared to living at our own home, being in familiar surroundings.
The benefit of being located at the Basque Coast during my placement, firstly, was I think you got a better idea of what it would be like to live down at the Basque Coast as a teacher. I think sometimes when you're not living down where you're doing a placement, you are a little detached, but being there, being able to use the same facilities, being able to see how people operated in that community after a school day meant that I really felt like I understood the community. I got why people would live down there and go to school down there, and I felt like I was connected more so when I was at the school because I was so close to everything that was going on.
The main highlight for me would be we were taking part in this community dinner organised by one of the churches on the main island, which is Phillip Island. I think it was a Presbyterian church. So what we did was they organised dinner, community dinner every Monday evening, and what we did was to volunteer, help out with the food serving, eating together with people living in and around Cowes and New Haven was something that I think I would definitely remember for a very long time.
So during the Basque Coast TAPP, it was really great to have, facilitated accommodation from the university, as it gave you a chance to room with students who were also having the same experience as you. And especially in my context, it was other secondary educators. So living together with them was a great experience, as it not only gave me the opportunity to meet new friends, but also gave a support network. Every day when we came home from school, we would discuss what we had learned for the day, what classes we had taught, and maybe we could bounce off ideas from each other. So I couldn't recommend more highly staying at the placement in the accommodation with other people.
One of the main benefits of living together with other friends would be that we're able to critically reflect upon our planning and our teaching, especially when we were forming our teaching practices. We were able to sit together and during dinner and learn from one another, especially when they come from different backgrounds and different country, their educational influences and how they actually do, how does that translate into their planning.
The positive aspects of staying in accommodation was that I created some really amazing friendships, so friendships that I'll be able to keep for the rest of my uni time. It also meant that when I came home at the end of the day, I had people who were in the exact same situation as me. They were doing the exact same stuff, and we could actually have a chat and support each other. We could talk about lesson plans, about things that were going on at schools, and so I constantly felt like I was really supported by friends, and it also was just so much fun.
I would say this experience was really different to the metro placements that I've had in the past, because I felt a lot more welcomed at the school. So normally when we go for metro placements, there's quite a few of us at the school. I'm sure people know what it's like. Maybe there'll be 20 or 25 at a school. It depends on where you're going. But when we were here in the rural context, we had just a few of us. There were just around 10 of us in the school, which I was placed Wonthaggi Secondary, and we felt a whole lot more welcome. There were only 2 of us in the science department, and we got our own desk at the school. We had a mentor teacher who was just there to look after us. And we got a lot more support than just the teaching. My mentor teacher helped me with places to eat during the weekend, places to explore around the neighborhood.
What we had was that holistic approach into being someone new in that environment. The support given by the real estate agent, the neighbors, the teachers, even my mentor. What we needed to do when we are living in a new environment was to know what was the concern, what were the interests of the student. So we needed to use this level or this context in order to sort of plan, in order to influence our teaching. The content may be the same, but the context were definitely influenced by these factors.
My first placement at a rural specialist school was very, very supportive. The school was very welcoming towards me and encouraged me to have a go working with individual students. And I think that was a large part due to the fact that Bass Coast Specialist School didn't receive many pre-service teachers, so they really encouraged me to have a go trying new things, which was a really nice feeling because it made me feel like I could have a go and it was okay if things didn't work out.
I think the difference between a rural and a metro placement is how personalised the experience was. My mentor contacted me well before placement. We got to know each other. He invited me down to meet the kids. Because it was a smaller school, I got to know my classes really, really well. They were so willing to have me in the classroom. They wanted me to get to know them and get to know what was going on in the school.
So I definitely feel this rural placement helped me become more classroom ready, as it was a very immersive experience. From day one, I sat down with my mentor teacher and he said, "What do you want to do?" And I said, "Oh, I would love to teach as much as I can." And he said, "Okay, starting tomorrow, you'll take all of my maths classes." And then that next week, I got to take his science classes as well. So being in the Bass Coast and having that really close relationship with your mentor teacher meant that I could learn a lot more from the placement, expand my teaching practices, and just get more chance to teach, which is the best part, because the more you teach, the more you learn about how to become a better practitioner.
I think the rural placement perhaps allowed me to see the totality of being able to take into consideration the level of the children, the learners group, before I could actually start to plan and deliver a couple of lessons. My mentor, for example, what she did was she shared with me a couple of theories that I've not learned while I was doing my M-Teach program, and she continually look at the children's ability. So from that kind of experiences, I actually learned that inclusive classroom goes beyond streaming children, goes beyond grouping. Inclusive classroom actually factor in all children ability for a particular subject, and then thereafter actually regroup them into other things that provided them the basis for them to actually get to know more.
I think what the rural placement gave me that I hadn't been given before is there was so much more opportunity to be in classes, to run classes, to do lesson plans, and so I came to the end of my placement and I felt that I had grown so much as a teacher.
A big part of my core teaching philosophy is creating and maintaining equitable classrooms for all students. They also encouraged me to have a go at working with individual students, trying new strategies and empowering me to try different things, and if something didn't work, it was okay because I could try something else. And this also increased my awareness that yes, catering for different students is challenging, but it's not impossible, it can be done.
I would definitely consider teaching in rural placement, especially in Bass Coast, partly because I sort of like that close-knitted community. I would definitely teach in a rural placement, compared to the city, partly because I think coming from Perth and coming from Singapore, it's a safe haven for me. I was able to sort of be myself. I wanted to develop, I think it would be a good opportunity for me to develop my career as a teacher.
I would definitely consider teaching in a rural context because I think it's really important to have committed quality teachers working in underrepresented schools. I've come to realise that it's not always about the fancy resources and technology that you have access to. While they are great, I think it's really important to have warm, encouraging, committed teachers in these schools who can acknowledge that every student can learn. It just takes quality teachers to do so.
I went home after my 2 weeks, and I got home and I went back to my busy life, and about on the Sunday I said to Mum, I totally understand why people want to teach in a rural area. It's so relaxed, it's calm, it's so friendly. I think going and doing that as someone who has only ever lived in metro, I was a little confused why someone would remove themselves, and I totally got it after the 2 weeks. I think two highlights. One was at the end of a long day of school, you came home, I had friends in my house and we could go down to the beach, which I can't do at home. So being able to go down and have a swim and walk along the beach was amazing. And the other one was that I had a placement teacher who really cared and really wanted me to do as well as I possibly could.
During the last week of my New Haven rural placement, the principal actually wanted me to share my magic trick, which I have been doing while teaching the classes. So she invited all the parents of award winners who were going to be given the awards during that week. And the magic that I was supposed to be performing was in the courtyard. So other school community were actually invited for that performance. So what I did was to rope in my housemates and my mentor teacher in the magic performance. And what we did was to actually show to the parents that it's not just me coming from Monash who's able to do magic. My housemates were too. And in fact, the principal actually joined in the performance, being one of the props. So I think that was the highlight.
One of the many highlights during rural placement was when we went on an excursion to Leongatha. We went to, I think it was the Leongatha Town Hall, and they were hosting a careers expo for the students, and that was really nice to see the different opportunities available to them after school because they were in their final year for many of them. And what else was really nice was that one of the students' parents came along, so it was incorporating that parent community school aspect, which was really crucial.
Well, I guess there were two different highlights. I guess the first was just exploring the Basque Coast with my newfound friends from the accommodation, just going the chance to go up I forgot the place, but we went to Wilson's Prom, and we went up this beautiful summit, and just the different views and scenery and change from that metro, city and traffic and everything. That was definitely the first highlight. But the second highlight was getting the chance to make a really close relationship with the school. After 2 weeks, I didn't think I would be as connected as I was to Wonthaggi Secondary, to the point it was a bit emotional to say goodbye. So just that community that you get to be a part of, getting to know the teachers, getting to know the students, you just can't get that experience when you're metro. But when you're on this rural experience, you really get that community immersion, which just makes it so special and so unique and such a memorable experience for me.